$40, the man behind the counter said. That's my offer. Virgil Tatum didn't flinch. He'd been a decorated Air Force Master Sergeant for 22 years. He'd flown over places most Americans couldn't find on a map. He'd carried men out of burning wreckage and never once let his hands shake. But standing in that pawn shop on a Thursday morning in Memphis, holding his late wife's nursing pin in his palm, Virgil Tatum's hands were shaking. He set the pin on the glass counter. It was small, white enamel, gold trim, the caduceus etched in the center. Lorraine had earned it in 1987. She'd kept it in a velvet box on her dresser for 31 years, right up until the cancer took her. It's sterling silver, Virgil said quietly. The backing is $40, the man said again. His name was printed on a laminated badge clipped to his vest. Hewitt. He hadn't looked up from his phone since Tatum walked through the door. Virgil looked down at the pin. Then he looked at the prescription bag folded inside his jacket pocket. Metformin. Lisinopril. The copay alone was $68, and the electric bill was already 3 weeks past due, and the VA had lost his paperwork again. For the third time this calendar year, and his pension hadn't deposited correctly since February. $40 was $40. He was about to say yes. That was the moment the bell above the door chimed. The man who walked in was younger, maybe mid-30s, broad through the shoulders, wearing a mechanic's uniform with a name patch that read Dex stitched in red thread. His hands were clean, but his boots weren't. He carried himself the way men carry themselves when they've been trained to walk quietly in dangerous places. Upright, unhurried, eyes moving. His full name was Dexter Alwyn Pruitt. Most people called him Dex. He'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan as an Army combat engineer before a roadside blast took most of the hearing in his left ear and all of the cartilage in his right knee. He was honorably discharged at 27. He'd been working at a transmission shop 6 blocks from this pawn shop ever since. Pruitt had come in to pick up a generator he'd put on layaway 3 weeks ago. His boss needed it for the shop's back unit. He wasn't planning to stay more than 5 minutes, but Pruitt stopped when he saw the pin on the counter. He didn't say anything right away. He stood near the door and watched. The old man across the counter was tall but hunched slightly at the shoulders. The kind of hunch that comes from carrying too much, not from age. The collar of his jacket was clean and pressed. His shoes were polished. Virgil Tatum was a man who still took care of himself even when life had stopped taking care of him, and Pruitt recognized that immediately because he'd grown up watching his own grandfather do the same thing. Hewitt was typing something on his phone. So, Hewitt said without looking up. 40. You want it or not? Pruitt watched Virgil's jaw tighten. Virgil picked up the pin. He turned it over once. He set it back down. I'll take it, Virgil said. Pruitt walked to the counter. He didn't run. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked over, stood beside the old man, and said, very calmly, Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you give him a minute? Hewitt finally looked up. He looked at Pruitt, then at Virgil, then back at Pruitt, with the flat expression of a man who had learned to feel nothing about anything that happened in his shop. It's a transaction, Hewitt said. I understand that, Pruitt said. I'm just asking for a minute. Virgil turned and looked at the younger man beside him. He hadn't heard him come in. Up close, Virgil could see the slight tilt of the man's head. Someone compensating for hearing loss on one side. He recognized it because he'd known 3 men in his unit who came back the same way. Son, Virgil said, not unkindly. This is between me and him. Yes, sir, Pruitt said. I know. He didn't move. There are moments in a life that don't announce themselves. No music swells, no light changes. You're just standing in a pawn shop in Memphis on a Thursday morning and something is happening, and you either step toward it or you step away from it. And whatever you choose, you carry that choice for a long time afterward. Pruitt had been stepping away from things since he got back from Kandahar. He stepped away from the VA groups and the counselor they assigned him and the guys from his unit who tried to stay in touch. He stepped away from his first serious relationship after the discharge, and his second. He showed up to work every day and he fixed what needed fixing, and he went home and he did it again, and he told himself that was enough. He was tired of stepping away. What's the pin? Pruitt asked, looking at Virgil, not at the counter. Virgil studied him for a moment. My wife's, he said finally. She was a registered nurse for 27 years, night shifts mostly. Community hospital over in Whitehaven. When did she pass? The question landed quietly. Virgil didn't flinch at it the way people usually do when strangers ask too directly. He seemed, if anything, relieved to be asked plainly. 4 years ago, Virgil said. March. Pruitt nodded. He looked at the pin on the counter. What do you need the money for, if you don't mind me asking? Virgil almost laughed, not bitterly, more like a man who'd run out of the energy required to be proud about certain things. Prescriptions, he said. And the light bill? You a veteran? Virgil looked at him. Air Force, 22 years. Pruitt nodded slowly. Army, he said. Combat engineer. 2 tours. Neither of them said anything for a moment. They didn't need to. There's a specific kind of silence between two people who've both been in places where the air smelled like burning fuel and fear, and both of them knew what that silence meant. How short are you? Pruitt asked. Virgil straightened slightly. I'm not asking for. I know you're not, Pruitt said. I'm asking anyway. Virgil looked at the prescription bag in his jacket. He did the math the way he'd been doing it every week for the past 8 months. 68 for the pharmacies, 41 for the electric. He had $62 in his account, which needed to last him until the end of the month, and the end of the month was 11 days away. About $47, Virgil said quietly. Give or take. Hewitt behind the counter cleared his throat. Pruitt ignored him. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He'd cashed his paycheck that morning, $430, which was supposed to cover his rent, his groceries, and the layaway payment on the generator his boss needed. He counted out $60. He set it on the counter next to Lorraine's pin. Take your pin home, Pruitt said. Virgil stared at the money. I don't take charity, he said. The words weren't angry. They were just true, the way facts are true, not to argue with, just to state. It's not charity, Pruitt said. It's a loan. You can pay me back whenever, or not. I don't need it right now, son. My name's Dexter, Pruitt said. My grandfather was Army too, Korea. He came home and drove a bus for 30 years because nobody would give him anything better. He never complained. Not once, he just kept showing up. He paused. I think about that a lot. Virgil looked at the younger man for a long time. My grandfather drove a mail truck, Virgil said eventually. For the post office, 41 years. They were something else, Pruitt said. They were, Virgil agreed. Hewitt had gone back to his phone. The shop smelled like dust and machine oil and old electronics. Outside, the traffic on the main road made a steady low sound, and somewhere down the block someone was playing music through open windows, something with a guitar and a slow beat, and the morning light was coming through the storefront glass at an angle that caught the dust in the air and made it look, just briefly, like something worth looking at. Virgil Tatum picked up Lorraine's nursing pin. He held it for a moment with both hands, then closed his fingers around it. Slowly, the way a man holds something he almost let go of. He picked up $40 of the money Pruitt had put down. He left 20 on the counter. For your generator, he said. Pruitt looked at him. You came in here for a reason, Virgil said. Don't let me be the reason you leave without it. Pruitt almost argued. He didn't. Hewitt processed Pruitt's layaway pickup without a word. The generator was loaded into the truck. Pruitt had borrowed from the shop, a heavy upright unit that took both of them to lift, though neither man mentioned the knee that made Pruitt wince or the shoulder that made Virgil compensate. They did the work quietly, the way men who know how to work together without being told do it. In the parking lot, Pruitt loaded the tailgate and latched it. Virgil stood to the side, holding his prescription bag. You got a ride? Pruitt asked. Bus stop's at the corner, Virgil said. I'll take you. You've done enough. The pharmacy's on my way back to the shop, Pruitt said, which was technically true depending on which route you took. He didn't mention that. Virgil considered it. He looked at the corner. He looked at the truck. He'd been taking the bus to the pharmacy every month for 8 months, 40 minutes each way, standing at the stop in whatever weather happened to be occurring that day. Because that was what the situation required, and you dealt with what the situation required. He was 71 years old. His knees weren't what they were either. All right, Virgil said. They drove. Pruitt kept the radio low. Virgil rode with his hands in his lap, Lorraine's pin in his left fist, not looking out the window so much as resting his eyes somewhere that wasn't anywhere in particular. There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Pruitt had known it. He recognized it in the old man. What kind of work did you do? Pruitt asked. In the Air Force, logistics, supply chain. 22 years of making sure the right things got to the right people at the right time. Virgil paused. I was good at it. I believe that. Came home and couldn't get a job managing a warehouse, Virgil said. He said it simply, the way you say things when you've made peace with them, or when you're trying to. 3 certifications, 2 commendations, 22 years of service. Couldn't get a call back from a company that stacks boxes. Pruitt kept his eyes on the road. He knew better than to fill that silence with something useless, like "that's terrible" or "I'm sorry," or anything that would reduce what the man had just said to something that required a response. Some things don't need a response. They need to be heard, which is different. "I started my own small thing eventually," Virgil said. "Delivery service, local, me and 2 other guys, ran it for 11 years. He looked out the window now. "Lorraine got sick in year 9. I kept it going as long as I could. When she passed, he stopped. It's hard to run a business when you're also trying to figure out how to be a person again." "Yes, it is," Pruitt said. Virgil glanced at him. "You know something about that?" "I know something about trying to figure out how to be a person again," Pruitt said. "Yeah, the pharmacy was on Lamar." Pruitt parked and waited while Virgil went inside. He sat in the truck and watched the street. An elderly woman walked past with a small dog. A kid on a bicycle wove between parked cars. The morning was just a morning. The kind of morning that doesn't mean anything except that the world had managed to continue being itself, which is more than you can say for some mornings. When Virgil came back out, the prescription bag was full. He got in the truck. He set the bag on the seat between them. $68, he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. We already handled it," Pruitt said. "Dexter." Virgil's voice had an edge to it, a dignified edge. "I'm not a charity case. I know you're not. I know exactly what you are." Pruitt looked at him. "You're a man who did 22 years for this country, lost his business, lost his wife, and still got up this morning and pressed his collar and polished his shoes before he went out the door." He paused. "You're not a charity case. You're one of the best prepared men I've ever met who got handed a situation that had nothing to do with preparation." Virgil was quiet for a moment. "The VA lost your paperwork?" Pruitt asked. "3rd time. Which office?" "Downtown. The one on Poplar." Pruitt nodded. "My buddy, guy I served with, he works at the VSO office now, Veterans Service Organization. He's navigated that system 100 times. He can get your claim resubmitted in a week, maybe less if it's what I think it is." He pulled out his phone. "Can I give you his number?" Virgil looked at the phone. He looked at Pruitt. In 11 months of struggling with the VA, not one person at any of the offices he'd visited had done anything other than hand him a form and point him toward a waiting room. Not one person had said, "I know someone who can help." Not because people were cruel, most of them weren't. Just because nobody had the time, or the connection, or the particular combination of experience and attention that would make them look at Virgil Tatum and see a problem with a solution instead of a number in a queue. "Yes," Virgil said. "I'd appreciate that." Pruitt texted the number from his contacts. He heard Virgil's phone buzz in his jacket. "His name's Beaumont," Pruitt said. "Tell him Dex sent you. He'll pick up." Virgil saved the contact. He looked at the name on the screen for a moment. Then he put the phone away. "My wife would have liked you," Virgil said. "Yeah?" She had no patience for people who talked more than they did. "She would have liked the way you operate." Pruitt almost smiled. He started the truck. "Where am I taking you?" Virgil gave him the address. It wasn't far. A neighborhood off Airways Boulevard, small houses with chain-link fences and mailboxes, at the end of concrete paths and yards that were either immaculate or not maintained at all. Nothing in between. Virgil's yard was immaculate. The flower beds along the porch were empty. Too late in the season for what had been there, too early for what might come back. But the edges were clean, the mulch fresh, the path swept clear. A man who kept his yard like that had someone he used to do it with. Pruitt didn't say that. He just noticed it. He pulled up to the curb. "Thank you," Virgil said. He held out his hand. Pruitt shook it. "Call Beaumont," he said. "This week, don't wait. I won't." Virgil got out. He walked to the door of his house, key out before he reached the step, the way a man does when he's been coming home alone for a while and doesn't pause at the threshold anymore. He opened the door. He went inside. Pruitt sat at the curb for a moment after the door closed. Then he put the truck in gear and drove back to the shop. There are things that happen in ordinary places, parking lots, pawn shops, pharmacy waiting rooms, that nobody ever hears about. No camera captures them. No article gets written. The people involved go home and eat whatever's in the fridge, and sleep and get up and go back to work, and the thing that happened just settles into them quietly, the way important things do. Dexter Pruitt didn't tell anyone about that morning. Not right away. He went back and helped his boss install the generator, and he finished 3 transmissions by 4 o'clock, and he drove home and heated up a plate of leftover rice and beans, and he sat at his kitchen table and thought about his grandfather for the first time in a while. Not any particular memory, just the general shape of the man. The way he used to hold a coffee cup with both hands. The specific sound of his voice when he said, "Dexter, you listening." Pruitt had been listening. He just hadn't known for a long time what he was supposed to do with what he'd heard. 3 weeks later, Virgil Tatum's VA claim was approved. 8 months of paperwork, 3 lost submissions, and the backlog of 2 presidential administrations. All of it resolved in a week and a half, because a man named Beaumont, who'd been in the same kind of mess himself, knew exactly which forms to file and which supervisor to call, and how to say this man served 22 years in a way that made it sound like what it was. Virgil called Pruitt when the letter came. He didn't say much. He said, "The claim came through." He said, "The back pay is," and he stopped for a moment. "It's significant." "Good," Pruitt said. "I want to pay you back the money from that morning. You don't have to." "I want to," Virgil said. "Not because I owe you, because I want to." "Then I'll take it," Pruitt said, because he understood the difference between those two things, and so did Virgil, and honoring that distinction was its own kind of respect. They met for coffee the following Saturday. A diner near Virgil's neighborhood, the kind of place where the booths are red vinyl and the coffee comes in a ceramic mug and the waitress knows what everyone takes without asking. Virgil paid. They stayed for 2 hours. Virgil talked about Lorraine, not in the way people talk about the dead when they're performing grief, but in the way they talk about someone who was real and present and funny and difficult and irreplaceable. He told a story about the time she made him drive 40 minutes to return a wrong-size rug because it was the principle of the thing, and he laughed telling it, and Pruitt laughed too. He talked about his grandfather. Pruitt talked about his. They talked about the VA and the transmission shop and the neighborhood off airways and what Memphis had been and what it was and what it might be. They talked about the generation of men who'd come before them, men who'd served and driven buses and carried mail, and never complained and never been given what they'd earned and somehow kept showing up anyway. Men who'd handed something down without ever naming what it was they were handing down. They were still handing it down. When they left the diner, the morning had turned into afternoon. The light was different, lower and warmer, the way late-day Memphis light gets in autumn, slant and golden and long. Virgil had Lorraine's nursing pin on his lapel. He'd put it on for the first time since her funeral. He hadn't planned to wear it that day. He'd picked up his jacket that morning and it was just there, already attached, like his hands had done it before he'd thought about it. "Take care of that knee," Virgil said in the parking lot. "Take care of that shoulder," Pruitt said. Virgil almost smiled. "How'd you know about the shoulder?" "I watched you load the generator," Pruitt said. 22 years of lifting things I shouldn't have," Virgil said. "Same story," Pruitt said. Touching his knee, they shook hands. Virgil walked to his car. Pruitt walked to his truck. Neither of them looked back, the way men who know they'll see each other again don't need to. It was just a diner. Just a Saturday morning. Just 2 men who'd both been trying to figure out how to be a person again, and had happened somehow to find themselves standing at the same counter at the same time on a Thursday when everything could have gone differently. The pin caught the light as Virgil drove out of the lot. Just for a second. A small flash of white and gold, there and then gone. Some things, when you almost lose them, you understand differently afterward. Not better, exactly. Just differently. The weight of them changes. Not heavier, more real. Lorraine had worn that pin for 27 years. She'd earned it in a building where she worked nights and never complained and was paid less than she was worth and kept showing up anyway. She would have recognized Virgil Tatum in that pawn shop in 2 seconds flat. She would have recognized exactly what was happening and what it meant. She would have said something. That was the thing about Lorraine. Virgil always thought that was her best quality. He was starting 4 years later to think it might have rubbed off on him a little. Or maybe it always had. Maybe it was always there, waiting for the right Thursday morning and the right stranger and the right moment when pride was about to cost him more than he could afford to pay. And something in him said no, not this, not today. And he let someone help. Next time you see a man standing very still at a counter, doing math in his head that has nothing to do with numbers, don't look away. He's not asking for anything, but maybe ask anyway.